So, David Grossman, first of all, thank you for being here. I can only imagine how difficult these days are for you and how much, I don't know, strength it takes for you not to remain silent. Thank you for that. Immediately after October 7, you spoke about a ranking in the hierarchy of evil. This is a terrible image. How does this gradation of evil looks now?
Yes, I said that there are ranks of evil. When people told me, what do you expect? You know, Israel was occupying the Palestinians for 56 years, and the Palestinians only reacted. And I said, no, there are also grades in brutality and hatred. Not everything is legitimate. Not every protest is legitimate. And what we saw in October 7th was really beyond our ability to describe. There are no words for it. And you know that for the Jewish people, it's the worst crime that we have experienced since the Holocaust. And it's not just a saying, it is like that, and people do feel like that. And getting back to life will be to find ways to live together with the hatred that we were surrounded by, with the brutality. All these we have to learn from anew, from AB.
And to accept it. You know, of your text here, where you talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you point out something that leads to a situation of, I don't know, maybe social schizophrenia, that almost an entire generation refers to this conflict with the term situation. And that reminds me of one of your character, a boy whose parents don't tell him about the Nazi beast, but he can
Yes.
hear them screaming during the night. So he lives with this trauma of an untold story. Are these two
Yes.
situations alike?
The situation is different. It's an interesting question that you ask, Magda, because when it came to the Shoah, to the Holocaust, there was a whole generation, my generation, that grew up in the silence of our parents. They did not want to tell us because they felt that we shall be polluted and destroyed and devastated by the knowledge of the Shoah and their cruelty. And we did not want to hear because we were directed into the future. We were the young generation, the daring generation, the strong one. So there was a kind of a silent agreement of two parties who didn't want to talk about it. Here now, with what happens on 7 October, it's the opposite. People want to know, people want to tell, people obsessively are talking about it. You cannot open the television, no matter what channel, no matter what hour, and you find another testimony of what happened there in the time of 7/11. So it's a developed. I wonder what to relate it to. Maybe the culture now is more a culture of talking, unlike the end of the 40s. People are speaking and they know they want to speak. They go to a psychologist. They write to the papers. Every news magazine starts with that. And people found a way to talk about it. Does it diminish the pain? No, not at all. Does it make the pain less painful? Not at all.
I was wondering if 7 October will be a significant part of Israeli narrative like Shoah was.
It's, again, a very curious question. I also ask myself this situation. Already there is a competition of all kinds of organizations that monopolize the right to create the museum of the 7th October. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu immediately recognized the opportunity here to a kind of manipulation, sorry. But I guess that there will be other organizations that will take over the line of the story. And I wish that they do it cleverly, you know, that people will know what happened then and yet still feel the wish to live, L-E-A-V-E, that people will not be paralyzed by the atrocities, but find a way to contain them, to contain this human or unhuman option of brutality, and to continue with life and to find reasons to live and to find reasons to live in a world that is very, very hostile against us. All of these are huge tasks.
You are talking about the huge polarization in Israel, about the hatred between tribes, you call them tribes, but this polarization regarding Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we meet him also outside Israel. We are witnessing pro-Palestinian protests who are becoming anti-Israeli movements. And also the far right, you see, is on the rise in Europe. How do you see this from Europe? Do you believe that, I don't know, anti-Semitism can return despite the trauma left by the Holocaust?
Well, I'm very suspicious towards this approach regarding us, the Jews, regarding anti-Semitism. Israel can be criticized, should be criticized. Occupation must be criticized. We must make it unforgettable unless it ends. But there is a difference between anti-Semitism and criticism. And I must tell you that being a Jew, I developed very delicate ways to tell you when something that is addressed towards me is legitimate criticism and when it is anti-Semitism. And with that, with anti-Semitism, we should not collaborate. We should not be tempted to use it as a weapon against Israel.
Because you are talking about Netanyahu regime. How is Benjamin Netanyahu still holding on the power? I know it's an eternal question almost, because before October 7, there was protest against his regime. There are still protests now, and yet Netanyahu still looks strong, surrounded by even more radical politicians. What keeps him in power?
The attraction of people towards fear, towards authority. He knows how to play the game. He's a genius orator. He provokes all the time the deepest fears of Israelis, of Jews, of human beings. He knows how to do it. I think the greatest crime even of Mr. Netanyahu is not corruption or all those things he's been accused of, but the way he allowed Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of Interior Security, this fascist who behaves in horrible ways, who is really leading the people of Israel into catastrophe in the terminology he uses, in the fears that he spreads around him. And Netanyahu is kind of captive at the hands of this person. But they want to be captive. That's the tragedy. They are not rebelling against it, many of them. On the contrary, you will hear people saying, Netanyahu is a real man. Look what he did to the Palestinians. Look how he magnetized at the beginning Joe Biden until Joe Biden was fed up by him. He knows what to do. He knows how to manipulate the whole world. And the whole world allows us to do what we want. It's terrible to see a whole people going astray. And as long as there is growing hatred towards Netanyahu, and there is, yet at the same time, more and more people are convinced that he is right, and they're just blinding themselves in order to believe in him. And he tells them what they want to hear, that the whole world is against us, that the whole world hates us, that there is no chance ever to any peace between us and the Palestinians. All the things that have a nucleus of truth in them, I cannot deny it. Most of the things that we are not living in Switzerland. Yes, we are living in the toughest neighborhood not in the region, in the world. And he knows how to take these dozens of of people who support him, and he enlarges it again and again.
That's terrible. You know, there are different situations, but in Russia, for example, they said that there is a Putin generation to explain why Russians are not revolting. Can we speak of a Netanyahu generation and even, I don't know, a Hamas generation? Because Hamas has been in power in Gaza for a long time, as Netanyahu in Israel. But how can such a generation be recovered, and how can you make, I don't know, politicians to trade in hope rather than fear?
Almost impossible, really almost impossible. We were exposed to such brutality by the Palestinians in 7/11 that it's very hard to convince Israelis that there are other Palestinians or that peace is the only way to heal. I can believe in that, but I know that I belong to a very small minority.
You know, this transitivity of evil has always seemed to me, I don't know, the hardest exercise, to put yourself in the place of somebody that you could harm, and this will stop you from actually doing it. Is this exercise possible today between Israelis and Palestinians, or impossible?
It's impossible and very needed at the same time. You know, there is this, the theory of roles, the psychoanalyst who said that imagine yourself a moment before you are going to be born. You don't know whom you shall be. Will you be white or black, man or woman, slave or master, all the possible contradictions. And now go and decide how you're going to act in a certain situation. It's very useful. Yet, when time of animosity comes, people are not very thoughtful, and they are acting from the guts, not from the mind, not from the brain. And they get the pleasure of acting from the guts, because there is pleasure in not thinking after all, in not confiscating your mind for decades on moral questions. People want to feel the pleasure of brutality and the pleasure of just doing things that they feel primal and intensely, forgetting on the way that they will pay a heavy price for all of these forgetfulness.
In theory, you know, we usually say that solutions come from moderates. Do these moderates still exist in Israel and in Palestine, or maybe Hamas succeeded to be the spokesperson for all Palestinian cause, because Abbas seems to do not exist anymore. He's absent.
He's absent, but don't forget that he collaborates with Israel for some years now in quite an efficient way. And he helps Israel to do or to fight terrorism in the West Bank and also within Israel. It doesn't mean that he likes Israel or trusts Israel, but he's doing some useful steps. Is it possible for a young generation of Israelis to reconcile in the future? Is it possible for young people of the Hamas? I don't know. I just don't know. And if you ask me today at this point, I think that it's almost impossible. But what we have to aspire to is not this mutual peace and love, but what we can achieve at this point of time. And this is slow healing of our situation and of the Palestinian situation, and make life possible for them, so they will be able to collaborate more and more with, not only with Israel, but with the idea of having Israel, of the inevitability of Israel.
In the text you wrote in March for the New York Times, you mentioned that the other nations interested in resolving the conflict should understand that Israel and Palestine are no longer capable of saving themselves. Who are these other nations who can actually ensure peace? Because, you know, the United States are also at a crossroads, especially with the possible return of Trump. Europe is dealing with the war waged by Russia. So
What's the question?
who are these other nations who should involve?
Well, other nations are nations that will not act extremely, that understand the complexity of this situation. Here in the Middle East, it can be Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, also in another place, Morocco, Egypt, 4 times, Jordan, quite often, because Jordan knows that they are also dependent on us in helping them from the extremists within Jordan. So they behave in a double way, in a double booking way. But all these people, and Israel, of course, Israel is a major opponent of the conflict. But if you ignore the Palestinians, and many among those countries want to ignore the Palestinians or the Palestinians' cause, if you ignore them, you will not have peace, you will not have real peace, you will not have a chance to improve the situation. It will explode in your face. It will be a piece of the rich, and a piece of the rich doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
You know, the outside perception is that it's very easy to take someone's side. Intellectuals like you yourself don't do that. On the contrary, how would you summarize this decades-long conflict where the victim is not just one? And what does it mean to be both a victim and an aggressor at the same time?
Exhausting. But I think it's really, if you seriously want to solve the problem, if you seriously want to solve any other human problem, also in a clash between yourself and your wife, your brother and your other brother sibling, you must bereft yourself from prejudices, from all kind of flat beliefs, and try to expose yourself to the complexity of the situation, also of your enemy. It will not make you lose your identity. On the contrary, it will make your identity stronger because it will be more in contact with reality. But you will be able to explore the complexity of this situation, to understand the points where your enemy can break, where you can break, the place where you are making mistakes and your enemy makes the mistakes. In that sense, I think that being a writer is very helpful for me, because what is writer doing? You know, you just try to read reality through the eyes of so many other people. Some of them are your enemies, some of them are your haters, and yet you do it. You expose yourself to the multi-layeredness of reality. You do not protect yourself from reality. And if you're doing so, so many new things are revealed to you. And you feel how you have been trapped by one legislative story of yourself, of your history. And if you do that, you are not in contact with reality. On the contrary, you are in contact with illusion, with fake words and fake languages.
Able to write literature this past year?
Say it again.
Did you write literature this past year? Were you able to write?
No, actually, I wrote one book for children, for young children, and I wrote a poema, a long poem that will be played here with music quite soon. But I feel that still I don't have words to describe what we were exposed to. And I think it's not so bad not to have words, because we are in a time of grieving. And when you're grieving, you don't really have words to describe. You can cry, you can shout, you can sigh, but don't try immediately to heal, because what we were victim to is so horrible that it's better that we shall recover more slowly than usually in other catastrophes.
And you still have hostages in Gaza. In Gaza are still dying people.
Yeah, in channels, in terrible situations. I feel I have two different watches. One of the trivial watch that says that right now it's 5:30 or something. And then there is the inner watch, the watch of the hostages, of the captive people, of the starving people, of the raped women, of the babies, all these people. Think about it, it's impossible. It is so painful, and yet this is our duty, our civil moral duty, not to collaborate with indifference, but also to be there in the time of the inner watch.
What is your biggest fear concerning this war and the future? Because your questions is obsessively like an obsession. Who will we be when the war comes to an end?
Yeah, it's a question. It's a serious question because we shall come out different, very different from ourselves. We shall be different in all walks of life. Everything will be different. The way we look at things, the way we are with people, families will break. Children will have no childhood. Adolescent will make a leap over their adolescence period. Many things will be changed. The things that we like to do. I'll not go to all the things that will be changed. The principle is understandable. What is my greatest fear? That this reality will change us forever. That it will make us too stiff and tough, not nuanced, not precise. Just if we are doing that, we shall collaborate with evil. Of course, not in the highest level of evil, as we spoke about in the beginning, but about some evil. And I don't want to be confiscated by this evil, and I don't want to belong to it. I have my way. I'm a writer, so I can liberate myself through writing, but most people do not, and especially children or youngsters. They are the places that are more liable to be corrupt by a situation.
What about the solution? Is there any other solution that this two-state solution that is on the table officially, but it's frozen?
It's frozen, of course, almost it is non-existent, but actually, and surprisingly, it is this period that suggests a possible solution. I do not see why the solution between Israel and Palestine now, that hopefully will be achieved in the mediation of the United States and some other countries, that this peace will not start the first steps of a larger, wider peace, or let's say arrangement or a dialogue between us and the Palestinians. Because after all, both sides know now for sure, in the most cruel way, that this war cannot be won, and that we must find a way to live in this reality, in a way of peace, because otherwise we are doomed to kill and to be killed, to live by the sword and to die by the sword. To think of all the people who have been murdered so brutally, and to think that what will be the ending of what they sacrificed, and that it will be only this half-baked peace, and instead of being able to use it, to act differently. If I was to whisper at the ear of the Prime Minister, I will tell him, go to the Palestinians today, go to them, tell them, if their leaders who led the 7th October is gone, go to them, tell them Israel suggests you something new. We are very strong. In the end, we can crush you, the Palestinians. And we have all the right to do it after what you did to us. But A, there is no justification to what you did for us. And B, we want to suggest you something else, something new. We want to suggest you to have peace and not this circle of revenge, this vicious circle of revenge. Let's try for 10 years the way of peace. And then if we fail in that, we always can go back to fight. We are very good expert in fighting and killing. But I say no. let's try the other way.
Yeah, but you know better than me that it's not about Israel and Palestine, it's also about Iran. So
Iran is there to stay, and Iraq is there to stay, and some other countries. But our way to confront Iran is to start to advocate peace. You know, I know it sounds very naive, but there were years that there was very good, warm relationship between Israelis and Iran. It was called then Faras. And we had really strong and deep relationship with the Iranians. So it's about people in the end. They created this reality. Of course, the Iranians of today will not want to have anything with us. But maybe after some years, maybe the guards of the revolution in Iran will be weaker and weaker. Maybe there will be a new generation that already started to flourish, we saw it. And they will demand their right to live normal life without fear, without hatred. Many things can change.